we are pleased to present our Meet the Candidates night. Our role is to let the candidates talk as directly to the people as possible. We let the candidates challenge each other on the facts. Journalists, pundits, and voters will have an opportunity to fact check afterwards. It's a debate. We, like a referee, enforce the rules and the time and simply stay out of the way. Our timekeeper is there. Percy, raise your hand. Keep an eye on her, candidates, because we will. The debate gives the public a means of forming a first-hand judgment of the candidates, and also serves the candidates because it gives them an opportunity to present their views. We have not given these candidates these questions in advance, except for the first one. You can ask them about any issues that you care about, and they will respond unscripted, so you can see how well they can think on their feet, so to speak, because they're seated. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, nonpartisan political organization. The League places an emphasis on getting out the vote, voter registration drives, Take Me to Vote programs in elementary schools, and efforts to streamline voter registration laws. These are all a continuing part of League activities. May I present my co-moderator, Judy Reynolds.
Here are some things that you should pay attention to. What issues are the most important to you? If they have not touched your issue, please ask about it. How do they answer questions? Do they really answer the question or deflect? Are they specific? Are they sincere? Are they knowledgeable? It's good to have a conversation with your friends and family about what you heard tonight. Did anything sway you? Did you learn anything new?
For this segment, we are welcoming the candidates for New York State Senate, George Borrello and Curt Crandall. Once again, candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to a question they received prior to this meeting and include a brief presentation discussing their qualifications for the job. After the opening statements, the candidates will have the ability to question one another, and members of the audience will be urged to ask questions of any candidate or all the candidates. Each reply to a question will be limited to 2 minutes.
If a question is addressed to a specific candidate, others will be welcome to add comments or replies of their own. Candidates will also be able to rebut or challenge one another, limited to 1 minute. There will also be a 2 minute, right? 2 minute for a closing statement. So here's the question. What is the most urgent problem facing New York State today, and what, if anything, would you be able to do to help solve it? We will begin with Mr. Borrello.
Thank you. I'd like to, first of all, thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this Meet the Candidates night, and I'd like to thank you all for being here, and as well as Mr. Crandall for being here. I'm proud to have grown up here in northern Chautauqua County. I come from a working class family, and I was able to go to college. Shortly after college, I started my own business from nothing, and I built that business into a successful, nationally recognized supplier to the hospitality industry. In 2009, I ran for the county legislature because I wanted to affect positive change in our area. I wanted other people to understand what my wife and I knew when we moved back here. This is a wonderfully unique place to live, to work, to raise a family. So we worked very hard in the county legislature, and we lowered property taxes. We reduced government, starting with reducing the size of the legislature from 25 to 19 members. We set aside politics and started working together for the betterment of the people. And I'm proud to continue that now as our county executive, getting people to work together. As far as what the biggest challenge facing New York State is, without a doubt, it is our oppressive state government that has actually forced its New York City liberal radical agenda down our throats. It's eroded our manufacturing base, it's cost us jobs, it's driven our children away, and it has without a doubt left the rest of us behind to pay for this ridiculous, out-of-control government. What I will do is, I'll show them what we've done here in Chautauqua County. We've set aside politics. We've worked together responsibly to make sure that we are keeping government efficient and effective. I'm very proud of that record here. It's a strong record that we have finally reduced the cycle of decline here in Chautauqua County. Good things are happening here. And I will go to Albany and work hard every single day. I will do the same thing I did here, effectively negotiate, work together, and collaborate to ensure that New York State is the best place in the world to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crandall.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. I am currently the chairman of the Board of Allegany County, and I've had that position for 14 years. I'm the longest serving chairman in that position for the county. I've been a legislator since 2000. I have held all of the leadership positions in the county, majority leader and Ways and Means and budget and so forth. I think that it's important, as you look at the difference between myself and Mr. Borrello, to take a look at what's been happening with some of the ads that have been out there for our campaign. It appears to me that Mr. Borrello is a hand-picked candidate by Mr. Flanagan, and there has been an awful lot of money that's been put into his campaign. I go to Albany, if selected, not owing anyone for any favors like that. I would only you, the voters of the 57th District. New York is in problem. They have problems, and it has to do with jobs. It has to do with people leaving. We are now dropped down way below Texas, California, Florida in population. We're losing congressional representation in New York, and our difficult business environment, it was talked about before with the folks here at the county level. Places are empty, and we need to do something different than $1 billion Buffalo project and other things like that for economic development. We need to take a look at the environment and our high property taxes. We've lowered property taxes in Allegany County 9 years in a row. We've retained our fund balance, and I would like to take that experience and the leadership that I have retained from Allegany County to Albany.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank
So I
you.
get to respond to this allegation?
It's an opening
Okay.
statement, and it's
I would
not-
hope questions would come along that line.
Thank
as we
you.
proceed.
Sure they will.
I will handle that, I think. I think I'm pretty good at that part, at any rate. We will now open our meeting to a question and answer format, and we hope their presentations have some questions. If you wish to ask a question, please stand. You can come to the podium if you wish, or try to ask it from your seat. Do not make statements. We want to hear candidates' responses. Rebuttals are limited to 1 minute, and there are no cross rebuttals. The other thing I want to say is the audience, if I know there's a candidate up here that you really want to win, I appreciate if you save your applause for the end so that we don't have to stop and start. So thank you for that. Our next question from the podium, I guess.
Yes, I'm Mark Twitchell in Fredonia. I would appreciate the candidate's response to a wind turbine question, and it relates to recent publications in the Article 10 process. I'd like to know how the candidates feel about the disclosures that the typical 100 megawatt wind facility, roughly the size of Arkwright's, will reduce New York State power generation carbon emissions by 0.05%, and that the New York State Department of Public Service is prevented from using the Freedom of Information Act to find out how much less than 0.05%, which is 1/10 of 1% due to proprietary secrets.
You got the question?
Yes.
Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first. I think you all know that I have stood strong against this ridiculous wind turbine boondoggle that the governor has been forcing down our throat. But what you brought up, Mark, is an important point. This is not about the environment. I know we have this dog whistle of greenhouse gases, reduced greenhouse gases. We're not reducing anything. This is nothing but the biggest investment scam of the 21st century that's happening, and it's a bunch of slick snake oil salesmen with the help of the governor who's trying to run for president that are forcing these wind turbines down our throat. They are not efficient. We're not reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We are running transmission lines to the dirtiest coal plants in America, like Homer City, which was brought up previously, to back up this unreliable renewable energy project. The only thing green about this is money, and it's a lot of money going into a lot of pockets, including the governor's campaign fund. This is a travesty. I've been working hard against it. We fought against the wind turbines in the lake 10 years ago. We'll do it again, and I will not stand by and watch while these slick salesmen and a governor with a political agenda forces and blankets our area with these destructive wind turbines.
Thank you. Mr. Crandall.
I think if you look at any of those projects and you look at whether it's wind turbine, solar, none of them stand on their own as far as an investment. They have to be heavily subsidized, and that costs all of us. There are wind turbine projects that are being proposed and worked on across the 57th district, besides what's talked about here in Chautauqua County. And I'm not sure that anyone would say they're against any kind of an efficient or green energy, but you have to look at how these are put together and the monies that are poured into them. I think that my understanding is that we could utilize better the facility, the hydro facility in Niagara Falls, that's not to the capacity that it should be. We have in Allegany County, Alfred State, they put together a house that's it's zero energy home, and there's a combination of thermal and along with solar that's being used for that. It actually operates the house, and you can put energy back into the system. But you have to use a little common sense, and I'm not sure that that's been the approach when Albany says we're going to be, fossil-free by a certain date. We're a strong gas area in Allegany County, Cattaraugus. I think that there can be better utilized methods that put those to work and use New York State resources versus Pennsylvania or Ohio or further.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Once you ask your question at the podium, you can sit down, so just in case there's a traffic jam, we don't have a problem. Are there any other questions from the audience? Yes.
My name is Austin Morgan. I'm the proud Democratic candidate in this race. Having worked in Albany, I know that one of Kathy Young's greatest strengths was her working in the Senate majority. As career politicians who have only served in the majority party in your counties, how do you propose to deliver the funding and legislation that our district needs while in the minority in Albany, with no say in the budget negotiations, committee hearings, or the daily active list?
This is for both candidates?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Crandall, please.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I have, first of all, New York right now, obviously, with a Democrat governor, and both houses being in control by the Democrat, puts either myself or Mr. Borrello at the bottom rung of a minority position, the Republican Senate. And I think that when I became a legislator, our board was split 7 and 8. And although we were of not a mix so much with party, there was certainly a mix, and no one was getting along, making things happen. When I came on board, we started to attack things and work together, and I have said a good idea is a good idea. And I think that a good idea and a proposal that is good for the 57th district is also good for New York State. And I think that the experience that I have, 14 years as chairman in a leadership position, plus my experience as a legislator starting with in 2000, plus go back before that, 1984, I actually began on the town level. I think it far exceeds my opponent's year and a half in an executive position plus a few years as a legislator. And I would certainly like to be able to go on behalf of all of the people of the 57th District and apply some of that leadership in making proposals that are good for the 57th and good for New York State in general.
Thank you. Mr. Borrello.
Yeah, the question was a career politician. A career politician certainly sends a message that this is all I've done. Remind you that I have a very successful business now, and I'm currently one of those people that has to deal with the ridiculous, burdensome regulations in New York State every day. So far from a career politician. That's number one. Number two, I have a strong record of going above and beyond whatever elected position I've been in to ensure that things actually do get done. So being in the minority, not a problem for me. I will work hard every day. I'm going to swing the hammer hard every day, and I'm certainly going to negotiate to get the things that we need here in this district. I'll be a strong voice. I will send that message more than 300 miles back to Albany, ensure that our voice is heard loud and clear. And I can assure you that things will get done, just like they've gotten done here in Chautauqua County, despite all the oppressive regulations that we have to deal with, despite with all the unfunded mandates we have to deal with, despite the fact that we used to have a lot of rhetoric and not a lot getting done here in Chautauqua County. Because when I first became a county legislature, the county legislature was referred to by our newspaper as the useless 25. Now we've downsized that legislature and we've gotten things done. We've lowered property taxes. We've reduced the burden of government. Our property tax rate now is lower than it was in 2006. 13 years later, we went from being one of the highest county property tax rates in Western New York to now among the lowest. We can get things done. You just have to work hard. And that's what I've done as a businessman, as a county legislator, and as this county executive. And I will work very hard every single day as the senator for the 57th District of New York.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
Yes, I guess it's to both of you, and it kind of piggybacks on the last question that was just asked. How does the rhetoric that's coming, we've heard a lot of it today, towards one party going to help you, especially being in the minority? And, you can decide who wants to answer that and who's done that. But
It's my turn to
how
answer.
is that going to affect how you're treated by the Democrats in the Senate and by the Democratic governor? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Borrello.
Yeah, I have had a strong track record. When I first became a legislator, we were split 13-12. And we had a very simple philosophy when I first became a legislator. Myself and the other freshman legislators was, if it's a good idea, we'll support it. If it's a bad idea, we won't, regardless of whichever party proposes that. We worked very hard to develop good relationships. And at the end of the day, I will tell you that we got good things accomplished. And what resulted was people recognized the efforts of myself and my fellow Republicans. And 4 years later, we went from having a one-person majority to having a supermajority in the county legislature, because we promoted those conservative Republican ideals, and we went from this county being majority registration of Democrats to now majority registration of Republicans. It was through good leadership and showing that those conservative ideals can produce results here in Chautauqua County.
Thank you. Do you want to respond, Mr. Crandall?
Yeah, I think that it's not fantasy land. Either myself or Mr. Borrello, if we were to go to Albany, we're in a minority party in the Senate, and we would be the low man on the totem pole to start with. My position would be that certainly, like I said before, a good idea is a good idea. I have a track record that shows that those things can be brought forward and worked with those in opposition of them. And I appreciate Mr. Borrello's position like that as well. But I think that this is a Republican primary, and the Republicans that are able to vote for me or Mr. Borrello, I think, need to make a decision of who it is you'd like from the 57th to go up there and be up there, because I think that in time the pendulum is going to come swinging back. We can't come out of, start this year with the legislation that has come out of Albany the way that it has, with the abortion legislation, the marijuana, the illegals or undocumented driver's licenses, these proposals coming out without somehow that pendulum comes swinging back. When it does, I'd like to be in there. I'd like to have already established myself and be in a leadership position that will help the 57th District, I think, more so than my opponent.
you. Any other questions from the audience?
I'm currently on a board for a local assisted living organization, and in New York State, we've seen the rising costs at the home as a result of the increase in the New York State minimum wage increases. Meanwhile, the Medicaid reimbursement from New York State is at $41.85 per day per resident. First of all, is this a topic that you are aware of? And second, what do you see in the future to get this Medicaid reimbursement in line with the true costs of care of our residents, of our elderly?
We'll begin with Mr. Crandall.
Well, I'm very aware of the, first of all, of the minimum wage. And that has hurt New York State, in my opinion. Right along the 57th district, we've seen businesses that have left and gone to other places. I can assure you that we've had a couple that have gone over the border into Pennsylvania because of that. It's put a burden on small business, and obviously it's put a burden on the lower pay scale of some of our healthcare facilities as well. New York State has a high-end Medicaid program, and going back several congressmen, if you will, going back to Randy Cool, we talked about the maintenance of effort clause that's in the Medicaid program, and I think that that needs to be looked at. We certainly can't continue down the path that we are in having costs exceed reimbursements. It needs to have an overhaul or a look at. So I think that needs to happen. I don't think there's a magic bullet to your answer or to your question, a magic one-shot answer, but it's a big problem all across New York. And there again, I think that collaboratively across New York, if you can get some momentum to help take a look at that, there may be some solutions in the future.
Mr. Borrello.
Yeah, well, first of all, my wife and I certainly understand what's happening with the minimum wage, as we employ nearly 200 people here in Chautauqua County, most of which are just summertime seasonal help, high school and college-age kids that were not for us, wouldn't have any other place to work. And then rising minimum wage means less kids are going to be working. That's unfortunate. And that's the vast, vast majority of people who are earning minimum wage are temporary employees, high school and college-age kids that are working. It's not the rhetoric that you hear about the family-sustaining wage. But as far as Medicaid, we spend a fortune on Medicaid. Here in Chautauqua County, we wire over $600,000 a week for our local share of Medicaid. It's an out-of-control program. They like to pat themselves on the back in Albany for limiting its growth to 3% per year. That's like telling a morbidly obese person that they're healthy because they only gained 50 pounds this year. I mean, it's an absolutely ridiculous, overburdened, bloated, corrupt program. And if we could have the opportunity to reform that program and be able to actually redirect some of those funds to the people that deserve those funds, the people that have paid into the system, that have worked hard, and that are now need that assistance because they're in a long-term care facility. Taking it away from those folks that use the emergency room as their primary care physician, or take a taxi every time that they have a hangnail to go to the emergency room. Direct the money away from there to the areas where it can be better utilized, the people that deserve it. That's what we have to do in New York State. Our program is already well-funded. It's just corrupt and bloated and goes to the wrong places.
Thank you very much. We have another question at the podium.
The state constitution states local officials must protect the health, safety, and welfare of all the people. What have you done as an official in Allegany County to protect the people of your region from the industrial turbines?
Thank you.
I think that on the county level, we've actually, our legislature hasn't taken that up, and certainly hasn't taken it up in the way that I believe that Chautauqua has here in a direct request, if you will, to the IDA. So we have not taken a position on that. We have a project that's going on in the northern part of the county that actually goes over into Cattaraugus County as well. And although that's split, the position of the people in Allegany County are fairly supportive of those of that project. So we have not overridden their position.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see by your face you don't like that, but that's
It's not a matter of It's
Yeah.
between you guys. So thank you for your question. Any other questions from the audience?
In the previous debate, they talked about how Mr. Borrello has gone to visit over 107 different businesses, and that he said that there were over 700 jobs that are needing workers right now. Did you, when you went to those places, find out what the average pay was from those places, and were those living wages?
Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, we did a detailed survey when we went to those. It's 107 businesses in the first 100 days. We've actually visited close to 200 now, and most of the visits were about 2 hours long. It wasn't a dog and pony show. We went in and took a picture and left. We did an in-depth study. We visited with those folks. We learned what their challenges were, what they felt the opportunity was for them in Chautauqua County. And we learned, number one, that the biggest problem they have is somebody that can pass a drug test and show up to work every day. And number two was that they lacked the people that had the skills to fill those open positions. So we did follow-up surveys, and we know that the average wage was rather high. In fact, I used those statistics in my State of the County last year to talk about the wages that were out there in those open positions, and they are family-sustaining wages for the most part. So there are good-paying jobs here. Our challenge is truly workforce. It's something I've been heavily focused on. It's not the political rhetoric, the dog whistle, that there's no jobs here. That's not true. What we need to do is shift our focus. And we talked about reforming and changing the way we do things in New York State. We need to focus on workforce. We've changed that conversation here in Chautauqua County. I'm proud to see that JCC now, with some encouragement from me and a lot of others, has now shifted that focus. They just gave away 30 full-ride scholarships to kids that are going to their Manufacturing Technology Institute. Those are kids that will be able to fill jobs here, stay here, raise families here. That's the pathway for us to keep our people here, to bring more people here, is to make something that is special in the sense that we have what businesses need, and that is a skilled, qualified workforce. That is the silver bullet, and we are focused on that. We fired that bullet here in Chautauqua County, and it's already starting to work.
Thank you very much.
In Allegany County, and not just there, but all across this end of the state, Alfred State College has done well with their technology program in Wellsville. And almost all of those jobs, or those folks that come out of there end up with a job. I mean, their placement's like 90+%. I mean, if you don't get a job coming out of there, there's something wrong. And these are plumbers and electricians and ones picked up in small manufacturing. We have a lot of them that head into the Rochester area. But I think that along with that, and there's a focus on just plain work ethics and showing up to work and all of the things that maybe you and I take for granted as a lifetime of work. But the young people need to have some direction along those lines, and that's actually getting recognized. So in the service industry, some of your restaurants and those type of things, and they're concentrating on some of those issues. So it's nice to see that there's jobs. Those need to be filled by qualified people, and everybody doesn't have a 4-year degree or beyond to fill those positions. It's trades. It's local, roll up your sleeves and get the job done with good work ethics, and that's what we need in New York State, and we can't have the people leaving the state that could fill those jobs for us.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
This is for both candidates. Governor Cuomo proposes an energy plan similar to that proposed by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Many energy experts say that Cuomo's energy policy and plan will undermine the reliability of the bulk electricity power system. How would you describe Governor Cuomo's energy policy?
I think we begin Mr. Borrello.
Yeah, it's a total farce. That's how I would describe his energy policy. It's ridiculous. It's all politics. You know, first and foremost, he went from 20 by 30, where we were going to have, 50 by 30, we were going to have 50% renewable energy by 2030. Then, because he had to compete with AOC, he shifted to 100% renewable energy by 2040, which is completely ridiculous and unrealistic. But also, it's a total scam. Right now, we are running transmission lines to the dirtiest coal plants in Pennsylvania, and this is to back up these unreliable green energy projects here that the governor has been blanketing across our state so he can run for president. That's really what this comes down to. And the reality is this, I can be at home with my wife and eat a salad and tell her I'm on a diet, but if I've got a drawer full of candy bars at work that I'm eating, that's exactly what's going on. That's the governor's energy policy. He is running these transmission lines to provide the power that New York State really needs, so he can point at these little pinwheels that he's putting up everywhere and saying, look what I'm doing for the environment. It's a total farce. It's costing taxpayers millions and billions of dollars with huge subsidies that are never ending. And on top of that, he has created this environment now that's going to ruin upstate New York by blanketing upstate New York with these ridiculous wind turbines and solar panels. And those of you that want clean energy, that's wonderful. There are small-scale projects that go directly from your home, or go from a small wind turbine or a small solar panel directly to your home. It doesn't burden the grid, which is aging and really close to failure in a lot of areas, and instead would actually provide real renewable energy directly to a home. But that's not going to put money in the pockets of the governor's cronies, and that's what his energy policy is all about.
Mr. Crandall.
Yeah, just saying we're going to go green and coming up with a goofy idea like that doesn't make sense. There's no common sense at all. There's room for helping the environment. Actually, Houghton College is cutting a ribbon, I think, tomorrow for stations that have to do with electric cars. They've got a NYSERDA grant. They're putting those up. I think, like I say, I think tomorrow is the ribbon cutting. And we've utilized methane off landfills and turned those into a cogen plant. I think that the natural gas, the natural resources that we have here in New York State need to be revisited. Those technologies have improved, and I think that a lot of the energy that we get are from over the border because New York State is putting blockades on utilizing natural resources that we have here in New York State and the 57th District.
Thank you. We have a question here. No.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Excuse me. SUNY is constantly squeezed as its costs rise, especially through state negotiated salary increases, while appropriations don't keep pace. What would you do about this situation?
We'll begin with Mr. Crandall.
Well, I'm not sure about the negotiated salaries out of Albany, whether it's SUNY or others. And we've looked at each of the counties right now. Our district attorney, I think we're going to be over $200,000 a year for our district attorney. Some of these don't make sense. And if you look at the overall operation, whether it's SUNY or some of the other salary structure versus cost and operations, it just doesn't make sense. So I think that government isn't the best business operator, that's for sure. And I think that that needs to have a look at it. Also, on top of that, to throw out and say, well, let's have free tuition, that doesn't blend and mix well either. So you have to have a little common sense in approaching these things, and I think that's an example of, to keep within your budget, you either have to have revenues go up or expenses go down. And you can't have revenue go down and expenses go up and then shake your head and say, gee, what happened? So a little common sense goes a long way.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borrello?
Well, SUNY suffers from the same thing that us in local government suffers from, and that's a state government that has a lot of mandates and continues to put the pressure on while not really providing any real relief. The free tuition is another example of that. But, SUNY has an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to shift the way that they do business. In the business world where I come from, when your business model no longer works, you change the business model. And right now, we're seeing that at JCC. They're shifting towards providing providing the programs that are needed to fill the open jobs that are here in Chautauqua County. I've had those conversations with JCC and they've responded. I've had similar conversations at Fredonia and not quite as much, but I understand that it's a difficult thing for them. They have a higher bar at Fredonia than they do at JCC. So we need to free them up to do things that work good for their communities. Right now, these decisions are made by the Board of Regents and SUNY in Albany, and they have no idea what's going on here locally. So we need to free those people up to make good decisions so they don't have to go back to all the red tape in Albany to change their curriculum, to change their programs, to better fit the needs of the communities that they're in. That's what needs to be done to change SUNY. Then the college will be able to do what's right for them and be able to adjust itself, right-size itself, and tailor itself to the needs of the communities that they're in. As your next state senator, I will push hard to reform SUNY so we can get rid of that red tape and let each of those communities decide for themselves what's best for those colleges to provide for.
We have a question here. What would you do to change the 3 men in a room state budget process, and how would you do that? We'll begin with Mr. Borrello.
I think transparency in government is always a good thing. Albany is always like the 3 men in a room scenario. I think like anything else, you have to shine a spotlight. For the longest time, we've had decisions forced down our throats because people haven't been paying attention. We've had that happen in a lot of other situations here. We fought to stop the closing of Lakeshore Hospital, and one of the things I said at that rally was, that when you shine the light in those dark corners, the rats will scatter, and that's what needs to happen. We need to shine the light on the ridiculous, corrupt things that are happening in Albany with that leadership. I will certainly be a strong voice as your next state senator to call out that corruption, to call out that cronyism, and to do whatever I can to ensure that the people have a voice in what goes on in that budget process and every other ridiculous regulation and law and proposal that comes down. We will shine a light on those things so the people of New York can hold them all accountable.
Mr. Crandall.
Thank you. The budget process in Allegany County changed a number of years ago, and it's one reason that we have good financial position and that we were able to reduce the property taxes 9 years in a row. And I think that that's what has to happen on the state level. And I find it a little ironic that Mr. Borrello sneers at the 3 men in a room when that's exactly what happened with the Republican endorsement that he got with 3 men in a room that I walked out of, frankly, because I was disgusted in the non-transparency of the Republican Party in selecting him for the 57th district.
I get to respond to that?
1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, so, I know Mr. Crandall has this, this fantasy about this, but the reality is I was first chosen by the Chautauqua County Republican Committee. I then went on to the process that everyone followed, the process that the Democratic candidate was selected by, where I was interviewed by the 4 county chairs of the Republican Committee to become the endorsed candidate. And Mr. Crandall did walk out of that room because he knew it was a fight he didn't want to try to win. And that's the reality. And I'm proud of the fact that those 4 chairs voted to support me. On top of that, I'm also proud of the fact that I have raised money and spent money from the people in the 57th district, $35,000 that I've raised in a very short period of time, mostly from $25 and $50 donations from people that believe in me and believe in my message. When you've got nothing to say, then you throw stink bombs, and that's what Mr. Crandall has been doing. He doesn't have a good record to run on. I've got a lot of good things to talk about, and that's what I've been doing. I've been talking about my record, I've been talking about the success we're having, and I'm talking about what I will do as your next state senator.
Thank you. Michelle.
Would the candidates please comment on the World Health Organization's findings that wind turbine noise is harmful to human health?
We will begin with Mr. Crandall.
I think that there's a lot more than what you outlined that they claim is unhealthy in that. I'm not there with. I can't answer to specifics like that, but I have spent a lot of time up in Wyoming County where there's a number of wind turbines up there, and you can throw a stone from the town of Centerville over into the town of Eagle, and those in Wyoming County, those have been successful to the point where, and those are subsidized. Like I say, you have to look at math on the thing. They aren't going to go by themselves. You and I aren't going to invest in those. If it wasn't for the subsidies, those aren't going to make it. But yet those towns and just over the line from Allegany to Wyoming County, they're supportive of those. It's brought in a lot of money to those particular municipalities and some of the farmers that have paid taxes on those lands for a long time. And that's what has influenced the people in the northern part of our county. So they were looking at that a little bit different than than maybe you are.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
Do you want me to respond to that, or is that?
I think we're going to go back and
Okay.
forth. What is your position on legalizing marijuana in New York State? And we'll begin with Mr. Borrello.
I'm against the legalization of recreational marijuana in New York State, but that's not just something I said. I've actually acted on that long before I was running for this position. As a county executive, very concerned about the impact of the legalization of recreational marijuana. I worked very hard in Albany in advocating against it, making those that are focusing on it aware of all the things that they missed. You know, the governor was on this race to legalize marijuana during the budget process, and it was an irresponsible, poorly thought out proposal. And I put together several tenets that I presented to a gentleman by the name of Axel Burnaby in front of the County Executives Association. He is the man that actually was considered the architect of the governor's recreational marijuana proposal. And after going back and forth with him in that meeting, he admitted that a lot of what I pointed out was not considered when they put this proposal together. NYSAC, the New York State Association of Counties, went on to present about 50% of what they presented to the New York State Legislature in their official presentation opposing recreational marijuana was the information and points that I had pointed out to them in that County Executives Association meeting in Albany. So I'm strongly against it. The amount of money that the governor is proposing, the $300 million, will all stay in Albany. None of it will come to local governments, but the fight against this will be at the local level with law enforcement and everything else. The social impacts will be borne largely by local government. And I see my opponent, the Democratic opponent out there, sneering out there, so he'll be just another rubber stamp on the governor's policy to legalize recreational marijuana. And I will also say this, we have no idea how horrible this is going to be on our community. Right now, we have in Chautauqua County, we have over 200 sworn officers, and only 4 of them are drug recognition experts, DREs. New York State Police, thousands of state troopers across the state, they have 70 drug recognition officers. We are unprepared for this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Crandall.
Yes, I'm opposed to it as well. And I've watched very closely Massachusetts and the problems that they've had and in trying to address some of the issues. All of the things that were pointed out, I agree with. And if you look at the budget part of that, which is, I think, driving Albany, where they started out at $400 an ounce, I think that Massachusetts was somewhere in there. Washington is like down to 40 now. They've got more of a backlog that I'm not sure that everybody smoking it could get rid of it. So it's a supply and demand, so that's not meeting their budget requirements. Plus, all of the problems that you have are going to cost an awful lot of money. The Sheriff's Association in New York just came out opposed to this a few days ago, and they were pointing out numerous problems in law enforcement that we would have, not just on the highways, but others. So it's not going to solve anything, but it's going to create an awful lot of more costs and social problems in New York State. We don't need it.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? We have a question here.
What will you do to reduce gun violence in our state?
We'll begin with Mr. Crandall.
Well, I'm not sure that there's something that I'm going to go up to Albany and do to reduce gun violence. I can tell you that I am supportive of the Second Amendment, and I'm a longtime gun owner. I'm an NRA member, recently joined SCOPE, and I am a proponent of gun safety and regulations. one thing that bothers me with the SAFE Act and all of the legislation that has come along, recently there was legislation that would do away with youth sporting, shooting clay and target and that type of thing. I'm an Eagle Scout. I don't want to date myself, but I actually took a .22 long rifle on the school bus with me going to school one time for a project that we had going, and ones laugh and shake their head at that, but that was part of the project at the time. So gun safety along those lines is what's needed. We don't need legislation that's going to do away with that. Bolivar Richburg School just had a nice layout in the paper, and a lot of the folks there that I know, they were champions in a high school clay shooting competition. Very proud of it, safely handling firearms. So I think that the gun violence really goes back to some of the problems that we have, the drug problems, mental issues, a lot of those things that need to be addressed, not so much the firearms themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Borrello.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that gun violence is not about guns, it's about people. And it's about people with mental health issues. The vast, vast, vast majority of gun violence occurs with illegally obtained weapons and people who have had access to them that have mental health issues. We take these opportunities, it's this Saul Alinsky liberal attitude of never let a crisis go to waste. And every time something tragic happens, we use it as an opportunity to really suppress our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, to defend ourselves. And that's the liberal agenda. They say, what are you going to do about gun violence? We're going to have to do things about violence at every level. And mental health issues are not being addressed. Instead, we're looking at ways of taking guns out of hands of legal, law-abiding citizens in violation of their federal constitutional right to do so. And that's really the dog whistle issue that is upsetting. I am a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I certainly understand the fact that there are people out there that look at these tragedies and think that something needs to be done, but that is not the answer to the issue. The answer to the issue is understanding and better controlling human behavior. We had a huge issue many years ago with drunk driving, DWI. It's gone down dramatically. Well, how did we get there? How did we get to where we were back in the 70s and 80s with all this, these road deaths down to where we are now, which is still significant, but far, far less than it was? Did we do that by outlawing cars? Did we do that by making everybody blow into a breathalyzer before they start their car, even if they've never been convicted of a crime? No. We did it by controlling human behavior and by holding people responsible for their personal actions. That's the answer, is holding people accountable for their personal actions. It's what worked in that situation, and it's what worked to curb violence of all kinds, including gun violence.
Thank you very much. Question?
Yeah, I guess I'm going back to my question because I don't really think it was answered. How do you think that the rhetoric that you have spewed here, and it's one of you, not the other, towards Democrats, liberals, coming up with all these name-calling things is going to help you reach across the aisle and get funding that needs to come back to this district? How is it?
If you ask the question again, don't you think you're going to get the same answer? So
well,
you're just taking up
some honesty.
Well, you're going to get what you got,
yeah.
right? And so I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, next question.
We just had a lot of talk about gun violence, and just my question is, would you support regulating high-speed machine guns as opposed to single shotguns, because the quicker the machine gun fires, the more people you kill, and you don't need that to shoot a deer. So that's my question. Would if that legislation came up where it was...
We got the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Crandall?
No.
Mr. Borrello?
Yeah, again, this is another one of those things where, our freedoms don't, we don't lose our freedoms in this country in a big wave. It's a little trickle, one drop at a time, and that's one of those little trickles that's dropping on our rights. And, I love this argument about how, well, you don't need that kind of gun to shoot a deer. Our Second Amendment is not about shooting deer. Okay, it's about two basic things, and that is the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and also to rise up against a tyrannical, suppressive government. And the fact that these folks are out there trying to make this about hunting or shooting for sport, that's not what this is about. And again, this is about controlling human behavior, holding people accountable for their personal actions, which we don't do anymore in this country. We give everybody an excuse because we've had this happen to them when they were a child, or this happened 200 years ago. Whatever it is, this is the excuses that we've given to people and given them the right to go out and do heinous acts and feel that they can blame it on society or on someone else. Personal accountability is the answer.
Thank you. I did let you, if you had more to say, you can say it. You said no, and I just stopped you. But you can continue.
Only to circle back, and Mr. Flanagan, who is supporting Mr. Borrello, actually voted for the SAFE Act, and I think that I am the one that is going to go up there without, again, being beholden to anybody.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
First of all, I commend Mr. Crandall and Mr. Borrello for being willing to go and defend our rights in Albany, so God bless you. You spoke of unemployment, you spoke of workforce needs. Agriculture is one of the primary economic industries in our district. What would each of you do to help grow the agriculture industry and make farming more profitable in your district?
It's my turn. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I can tell you what I have done. First of all, I've been a strong supporter of the Cornell Cooperative Extension and all the work that they do to work with our farmers. I led the charge to increase their funding at the county level, $100,000 when it had been cut in previous years. The Cornell Cooperative Extension is a great tool for us to enhance and improve farming in our area. We're also in the middle of something really a game changer here in Chautauqua County. We call it Project Grow Chautauqua, and it's a project that really was my brainchild. With Senator Young, her and I had toured a hops facility at Cornell Cooperative Extension. We talked about the opportunity to help our farmers diversify by being able to grow hops and other grains. The missing link was having a place where they could all bring their supply, one central location, so we create a consistent, stable, high-quality supply of those products. And that's what we're working on now. Long story short, because it's a long story to tell, we are now in the middle of a feasibility study that is being funded largely by a gentleman who came back to town looking to do something entrepreneurial to support agriculture. I pitched my idea of this hops and grains cooperative, and now we're in the middle of this study. It's going to be a game changer, creating this vertically integrated agribusiness that many farmers will be able to benefit from, not just here in Chautauqua County, but all across the southern tier and the 57th district. I'm proud of what we've done. When government gets involved with farming, it's usually with like subsidies, temporary subsidies, or making promises they can't keep. This is actually a sound business idea that's going to transform and support our agriculture industry for a long period of time, and I'm very happy to have been the start of that.
Thank you. Mr. Crandall.
I'm a longtime Farm Bureau member and have attended all of the any event like that and in meetings that they've had since I first became a legislator. It's not only big in Allegany County, but all across the 57th district, agriculture. We have processing plants in Allegany County that depend on milk and milk production. Cheese, Cuba cheese, Empire cheese, Friendship dairies. There needs to be more processing in New York State versus someplace else. And the dairy industry is in dire need of that. And I think that the new position that Senator Young has falls right in that, and I think that that can be very helpful for the 57th district. In Allegany County, we've looked at a bioenergy project, and that's been funded to around $6 million out of about a $14 million startup cost. And that is to take a fast-growing, low-end, like willow products and that, and turn those into a heating pellet. And you can say, well, the world's full of those. It's the extractions from the time that it's put into the process before it becomes a pellet is the real game changer in the money there. Pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, that type of stuff. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done with technology that can help agriculture in this district, and certainly would look forward to exploring a lot of those.
Thank you.
I have a question.
We're closing now. Do you have a question?
I do.
Do it, because we're running out.
Mr. Crandall, are you aware that the Western New York Public Health Alliance has issued a statement that the health of our community in Western New York is at risk because of wind turbines, and people in Wyoming County are the cause of that because of the increased existence of wind turbine illnesses, infrasound, and other annoyances that have caused many illnesses in these people. And your county is one of those public health departments.
Are you asking a question? Is he aware of it?
Are you aware of the Western New York Public Health Alliance
Thank you.
concern for our health?
Thank you.
I've had volumes of information sent to me about health concerns around wind turbines. And I think, trying to grind me down to where I'm at on wind turbines and other forms of energy, like I say, in northern Allegany County, there are farmers and those that are the landowners up there that are looking at this as a positive, getting something back from years and decades and actually generations of paying taxes on some scrub land up there. So our position had been to allow the locals to take position on that. I would respect the position taken here in Chautauqua County, but I think that there are other positions, and that's an example of one in the northern part of Allegany and Cattaraugus County. They're looking over the border to Wyoming County, and they're trying to follow suit, and we have not obstructed that from our position as legislators. We're letting that play out. There's actually public hearings and input going on those projects right now. And I'm sure that part of it will be heard, that position that you've explained.
Thank you. The question was directed to...
I see. We'll now allow 2 minutes for a concluding statement, beginning with Mr. Borrello.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here tonight, and appreciate the opportunity to speak. When I first decided to run, I actually had said no at first to running for the Senate seat. I enjoy being the county executive. We've got great momentum here, a lot of great things going on, positive momentum. And so I decided, at first that I didn't want to run. But then, under the urging of a lot of folks, I looked at the situations that we have here and how much of what happens here is so dependent on having strong advocacy in Albany and ensuring that we have somebody in there that is delivering that message of what we need here, the things that our values here, what we're opposed to, what we're in favor of, someone that's going to strongly advocate. Mr. Crandall talks about the pendulum swinging back eventually the other way. Well, I'll be there to push that pendulum a heck of a lot faster as your next state senator. It's important for me to be in there. This is not about my ego or being called senator or this is my turn. This is about where do I feel I can be best and most effective for the people of this county and the entire 57th district. And without having that strong voice, someone who's used to going above and beyond that traditional role of that elected position to actually get things accomplished, something that I have a very strong record of doing, we're not going to get where we need to go. That's why I stepped up to do this, because it felt like this is my opportunity to serve that greater good, to continue to serve the people of Chautauqua County and to help people not only in the 57th district but throughout upstate New York. I'm proud of the record that we have here. We reversed the cycle of decline here in Chautauqua County. We've got people working together collaboratively, more so than ever before. In a short period of time, we've accomplished a lot of great things, and I'm looking forward to bringing that type of leadership and hard work as your next senator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Crandall.
When I first became a legislator, Allegany County was in disarray. $5 million in the hole, And we had issues with the Court Facility Act from 1986. We hadn't complied. We had some real problems. The board couldn't get it together. And through time and the leadership that I finally got to act upon when I was put in as chairman, we were able to accomplish an awful lot and take care of things that didn't get taken care of in the past. The chairman position in our county is good for 1 year. So at each of our organizational meetings, my fellow legislators vote on who's going to be the chairman. And I've offered to step aside and let someone take that has like-minded position in moving the county forward. But for 14 years, I have been selected as the chairman. We've made a lot of accomplishments in that time. I'd like to apply these traits to Albany. And again, I am the only candidate that you can vote for that is not going to go to Albany and owing favors to anybody but the people that vote for me in the 57th district.
Thank you very much. Voting is an essential step in the process of democracy, and in exercising our choice for elected office, we affirm our faith in the democratic process. We urge you to take the next step and vote and demonstrate that democracy is alive and well in Chautauqua County and in New York State. I want to thank all the candidates who have come forward to be at this debate. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, Voter Service Army, who helped put on this debate tonight. Tina Rauza, Pat Carell, Percy Bernatz, lots of other people. I want to thank Dunkirk Local Access. You can see this debate in its entirety at dunkirkaccess.com. And the polls will be open from noon to 9 p.m., is that right? On Tuesday, June 25th. Thank you very much. Good night.
I enjoyed the things you said. I really did.